Alanah Pearce is attempting to clarify her stance on disabilities with that previous video train wreck that she made that caused the internet to go up in flames. What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Smash JT. And I went into this video that Alanah made trying to cover her bases and maybe rectify the misspeak that she had in her conversations about what happened, and I went in with an open mind, like, okay, let's see what she has to say here. And from jump, I was like, I don't know if I'm really liking how she's taking this approach. Almost like she's talking down to me because I don't understand what it's like working in the video game industry because I don't do this as a professional job, where this is what she gets paid for at a major AAA company, and we should just listen to her because she knows what's best for us. Hit that subscribe, give me a like, and check out SmashJT.com for the full article breaking down my thoughts on Alanah Pearce's clarifying the disabilities situation and how I feel like she went about this entirely wrong. From Jump Street, she starts it off speaking down to us because we weren't smart enough to understand what she had to say.
Hello everyone. If you don't know me, I'm Alanah, and I work 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. at a AAA game studio. I am a writer on the design team, but I also work as an accessibility consultant, and I've done that on 7 separate games so far. I'm credited as an accessibility consultant on God of War Ragnarok because that is the most work that I did on that game was in the accessibility space. And I also created my own award show called the Video Game Accessibility Awards.
She clearly lays out her professional status in the industry and her credentials out there like she's reading a resume about how she knows so much about disabilities in the back end that people that want to comment on it aren't really allowed to because we aren't professionals in the industry. This is what she does full time. She works at these companies. They pay her to do this. So ergo, we need to trust her opinion on this. And oh, by the way, she made sure to wear glasses this time just to come across as far more intelligent and eloquent.
It's a thing that I care a lot about and know a lot about, more than most people, though there are certainly people who like full-time do accessibility in the space who would know way more than I do. But earlier in the week, I made a video that I called Elden Ring is Too Hard, in quotations. And majority of that video, I think it's like the first 8 minutes, I'm just basically talking about the negative reviews that Elden Ring has gotten for being too hard and saying that I disagree with them. Majority of that video is me saying, no, I think that you should get good. Like, I did literally say get good in it.
Now, I'll say this. Alanah is perfectly entitled to her own opinions, just like everyone else is. I feel like sometimes people that work in the industry feel like they have this one up on everyone else, that people aren't allowed to question them.
The second part of that video, I wanted to talk about something that I'm just going to give with more detail now. About accessibility design and why when people talk about being against a game being accessible, I think it's really silly because accessibility is so much broader than just a guy in a wheelchair, which is what most people seem to think of when they think about accessible design.
Pearce spends a significant portion of the video suggesting that the misunderstanding lies with the audience, aka you, and not with her communication or viewpoints. It's a bold strategy, and I don't really think it's going to work out great for her. Blaming your audience for not understanding what you're saying is probably the worst approach you could take. And then to double down on not apologizing, it just kind of felt like, here's the situation, here's why you misunderstood it, and here's why I'm right and you're wrong.
It is much, much, much broader than that and will definitely apply to you at some situation in your life. So in this video, I was talking about that. I was saying when people ask for accessibility in games, they aren't asking for an easy mode because they also just want to experience the hard game. They're not trying to get it to just be easier. And I was saying, you know, accessibility design is so much bigger than people think it is.
Alanah defends her position and role in working in the disability area of gaming because this is what she does full time, and she has her own disability, tendonitis in her hands, where she can't press the buttons fast enough in quick time events to be able to get through those events. So she needs to hold down a button so that she can get through it. And you know what? I can be compassionate about that. I get it. I understand it. And I think in that specific, unique situation, it's justified. I think that's a great move forward for the industry. Just like, I guess you could say, my disability with first-person shooters, other than sucking at them, is I'm unable to play it if it's not inverted. Thanks, GoldenEye. So every first-person shooter I play now has to be inverted, or my brain can't do it. I just can't make sense of it. It doesn't work. And even to the point of third-person perspective now, I need to have the inverted mode as well. It's a problem that I can't overcome because it was so ingrained in me for so long that it's just how I play the games. And if the game doesn't give me that option, I can't play that game.
A lot of this comes, of course, from people who actually care about gamers who have disabilities. I am one of those. It started in a very selfish way. I mentioned it in the video, but I have tendonitis in both my wrists. This means that I can't rapidly button mash. I've had that for like maybe 10 years now. And so I have trouble playing any game that just requires, like, if you have a QTE, I will always change to press and hold in the accessibility menu rather than tapping, because I will eventually, like, my wrist will lock up and I won't be able to do it. That's how I got involved in accessibility. And technically that is considered a permanent disability. I do not call myself disabled because I have that. Like, in general terms, I'm not going to say I'm disabled, but I've actually had people who most people would identify as disabled in the accessibility space criticize me for that.
On the surface, these are reasonable suggestions that every game company, if they're able to, add them into the game is a benefit to the consumer. The end product is now better and more available to more people. But my greater concern comes in when these companies start focusing more on how many people can we sell this game to? How do we expand our audience? How do we sell more product? Or in the live era of games, how do we get more people to play the game for longer periods of time so that they don't go play something else? What can we do to be more inclusive to make sure we don't lose our player base and get more people to pay us money? And I feel like that's a really bad angle to take when it comes to focusing on fixing the problems with disabilities and trying to alleviate a portion of the audience without ruining the core mechanics of gameplay.
Now, as I was saying, a lot of this obviously comes from people who have disabilities, who care about disabilities, who actually genuinely care. But I'm also sure that a lot of this comes from the app development and the web development, where they just want to make sure that you will never turn off the thing. Part of it is surely corporations being very time hungry. We call it the time wars here on this channel, where I've spoken many times about right now being in an era where corporations just want as much of your time as possible.
Alanah brings up the Microsoft chart that people were referencing in her replies of the video previously, and I wanted to talk about this specifically because this really annoys me. First off, people are looking at this chart made from Microsoft as the definitive, reputable source because we've all heard of Microsoft, so this is what everyone in the industry uses to focus on what disabilities are and to address them specifically. And I think that's really bad to narrow down disabilities specifically into a chart, to try to pigeonhole where people fit so that you can address those specific needs, as opposed to understanding that not every disability falls into the same category.
And there are three pillars of design. There is permanent, which is the thing that I think most people think of when they think of the word disabled. Person who has one arm, somebody who is blind. Let me pull this up, literally just give you a direct example. This is from Microsoft Design Toolkit, and I'm sourcing them because they are the company that most of you will know the name of or be familiar with, but you can find examples of this all over the place in this space. So we have permanent on this side, which is, for example, someone has a permanent disability, someone with one arm, someone who is blind, someone who is deaf, or someone who is nonverbal. Then there are temporary disabilities, which is like if you broke your arm, you broke your wrist, you have an ear infection. Then there are situational disabilities. This is an example that's used here as new parent, a driver who is distracted, a bartender. I can explain the bartender one because people are confused about that as well, and a heavy accent. People are also reacting to the heavy accent one. So let me explain what the situational disabilities mean here. Specifically,
situational, where I would argue if you're playing video games, a situational disability is life. Like, it's always been there and always will be there. And trying to fix this problem is basically creating a problem that you don't fix. Like, this is something that video games are an escape from reality as best as you can. And a game company, a developer saying, let's try to address situational disabilities is, as I said in my previous video, not the developer's responsibility. It's not their problem. It's the gamer's responsibility. The developer is trying to take it on themselves to fix someone else's life that is completely out of their control in order to sell more games or keep them on the game longer. And I'm taking the perspective, where many other people are as well, saying, no, A situational disability, as Alanah and people in the industry are calling it, is something that takes you away from the game, and the game developer should not be trying to impact that to keep you on the game.
Is if you're a parent, you're trying to play a game like Elden Ring, and you are halfway through your boss fight, and your kid runs across the floor and does something dangerous, you have to drop the controller and go and get them. That would be considered a situational disability, in that situation you are unable to complete the task that you are trying to complete because of something that happened to you situationally. You have been disabled from completing the task.
That right there, I think, is the crux of the situation. The biggest problem with all of this that Alanah once again fails to address. And if anything, when she does address it, she ignores the reality and explains why they need to fix the problem that is not their problem to fix.
The way this pertains to accessibility isn't to say that all games, all apps, all processes need to alleviate all of these things. That's not the intent either. Like, it's just a way in which accessible design is much broader than people think it is, in the ways that it can help a lot more people than people think it can.
Talking about the bartender in a loud environment and how that impacts your ability to hear a game. Obviously, bartenders aren't going to be playing games, but my point being, if you're going to be in a loud environment, choose your game to apply to the situation that you are in. Once again, it is not the developer's responsibility to fix a situational disability. That is on you, the customer, to figure out around the games that you are playing. Now, I get it for permanent disabilities. Yes, I think that's a great thing that should be addressed by developers. It's when they start reaching into these other areas where I'm like, no, like gaming and life is wholly separate than someone having a major disability that they live with every day. Like, those are two completely different worlds. And this chart and the way Alanah's trying to talk about it is trying to intersect all of them and interweave them and confuse the issue and make everyone think, oh, disabilities are all the same and we need to try to fix them all because disabilities are preventing people from playing games more. That right there, I would argue, is the wrong starting point. Now, Alanah, to her credit, I guess you could say, at the end tries to put a bow on this thing and tie it and make it look nice by saying, hey, what I'm saying, hey, if you're upset about the terms, I'm not going to tell you you're wrong. But then she spends the entire video up to that point saying otherwise, where it just felt like a major contradiction, where she didn't take accountability for contradicting herself multiple times in the initial video, and then contradicts herself here again by saying everyone's wrong the whole time, and then saying, but if you feel a different way, hey, that's on you, it's okay, maybe we can work together and fix this. It just feels disingenuous.
Now, if people are upset or offended by the term disability or disabled here, I don't think you're ever wrong to be upset by a word or offended by a word. If that's how you feel, then that is how you feel. This has been this way for a long time. It is used in the space all the time. It is used by permanently, visibly disabled people on a regular basis in the accessibility space. But language changes according to societal preferences all the time. So if people were to, just be learning about this term this week, which it seems like is the case for a lot of people, and are really offended by the use of disabled or disability in this context, I'm not against changing it.
Pearce could have taken a more friendly approach in her follow-up video, in my humble opinion, by acknowledging that not all situations classified as disabilities should impact game design decisions. It would be nice for her to recognize that while accessibility in gaming is important, there's a distinction between accommodating permanent or long-term disabilities and adjusting game mechanics for temporary conditions that do not primarily affect one's gaming abilities. Acknowledging this distinction would have helped clarify the stance, emphasizing that while gaming is definitely an important aspect to life for many people, including me, it ultimately does not take precedence over life priorities in situations that temporarily affect one's ability to play the game, where, again, it goes back to someone who doesn't have kids. Alanah is trying to implement game design decisions for parents out there, trying to understand what parents are dealing with and juggling so that they can better play the game and deal with having a kid. Where I would argue, no, stop it. The kid is always the priority. Gaming can always come second. And yeah, adding a pause button, okay, could be great. But if the design decision of the developer is to not because they want to make you feel immersed in the game and that's what they want to do with the game, let them do that. That's their game decision. they should be welcome and ready to do that. Ultimately, Pearce's videos seem to miss a crucial opportunity for meaningful dialogue. Instead of using the feedback as a springboard for deeper understanding or admitting potential oversights, she doubled down, leaving viewers to question not just the statements made, but the necessity of her position in the gaming industry in the first place. Do we even need these positions? That's what I got out of this after everything was said and done. And maybe I'm off base. Who knows? My point being is I'm not a big fan of someone who works in the industry taking the approach of talking down to me because they know what's good for me and me as the gamer, and especially me as a parent that doesn't know as well as someone who's trying to tell me that. That just really irks me and rubs me the wrong way. Anyways, those are my feelings on it. If you guys want more information about Alanah's follow-up video, check out smashjt.com. I have all the links, information, references, and my feelings and deeper discussions on there. If you guys appreciate what I'm doing, please consider hitting that join button. I would genuinely appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, you stay smashing.
The corporation wants to make sure that you don't have a situational disability that prevents you from engaging with their software, that makes their software frustrating, that makes you want to put down their software in any capacity.
Smash,